Hello and welcome to another episode of the Deal Flow Show. I'm JP Maroney, your host, along with Paul Nicolini, our esteemed co-host for this show. And we've got a great guest, as all of our guests. And I tell you what, if you're listening or watching this episode, we want you to grab every single one of them, binge, watch, whatever you got to do, get access to all of season 1 of the Deal Flow Show. And on this episode, we have Seth Farbman. And Seth is joining us. Are you in New York right now, Seth?
I am in New York, yes.
All right. Seth is a co-founder of VStock Transfer. We're going to be talking about that, some of the deals that you guys are working on. We're going to tap into your storehouse of knowledge as we grab as much content as we can. We're going to be putting together a book called Deal Makers, Deal Breakers, where we put the best ideas, secrets, strategies, tips, and tactics from our guests talking about the deal-making process. And so let's kind of start this off with you telling us a little bit about how you got started in the capital market space.
I will jump right in. First of all, let me say thank you both very much for having me. And, it's funny, you talk about, binge watching, over the last couple of months after I've gotten through all the business shows on Netflix, on binge watching, you look for shows like this that talk about business and entrepreneurship and about deals and deal making. So the fact that you guys are bringing content like this to the marketplace is fantastic. So I just want to say thank you, and thanks again for having me. Where I came from the capital markets, I started down the very straight and narrow path as a securities attorney. Did that for a couple of years and sort of had this bug to try out doing deals, and ended up working out of my basement and starting to do the SEC filings. I was, as I said, a securities attorney working on taking companies public, companies that were looking to raise capital. And at some point, I saw that I was drafting the annual reports and the registration statements. So why don't I try to actually put them into the EDGAR format? And started to do that. Slept on my couch for 6 months. The typical startup story. It wasn't the garage; it was the basement. And after 5 years, thank God, and a lot of hard work from my partner Shai Stern and myself, we grew that to about 4,000 publicly traded companies, about 100 employees, and we had the good fortune. We were bought out by PR Newswire. That was our first exit, and we had the taste, I guess, of entrepreneurship. We said, "Oh, this is fun. Let's see if we can do this again." And we loved the corporate services markets, as dry as that sounds. And we did that with V Corp, where we were bought out by Wolters Kluwer, and now spend my time with VStock Transfer as a stock transfer agency, working on IPOs, again, the public markets, and VCheck Global, which is background checks and due diligence. So really just a corporate services type of guy through and through.
How have you seen the marketplace change over these various ventures as we've become more and more a digital society?
Well, I think we could break down the different industries, but at the end of the day, I would say that they probably tie in that they are all becoming heavily reliant on digital tools, digital technology, and I think that's what people are looking for. I can tell you guys, I go to sleep every night thinking about, okay, we've got this amazing audience of, hundreds of thousands of shareholders. We've got hundreds of CEOs that we service, investment bankers. What else can we be bringing to them? And my mind is always wandering towards the AI and the technical side. On the stock transfer side, we're always looking for different types of technology, online verification services. And I think just in terms, and I'm sure we'll get into it later on in the podcast, but just in terms of the way that the companies are trying to get visibility, the fact that the issuers and the investment bankers are finding themselves more grounded than ever before, unable to do roadshows, they are reliant on the virtual conferences and the Zoom technology or whatever type of online platforms or social media to just get that story out there. And so that is more heavily relied on than ever before. And so it's taken some getting used to, but I think that people are adapting to it and appreciating it.
That being said, Seth, what are some of the hot areas specifically in the market today?
It's funny that there. I think we have to take a step back for a second and let's be grateful that there are hot areas, right? I mean, when COVID first happened in March and the markets tanked, I was sure that the markets were not going to recover because all the indicators showed otherwise. And I am not an analyst and I'm not an investment banker and I can't explain it, but clearly the markets did recover and the IPO market over the summer was extremely active. The secondary markets were active. People were looking post Labor Day to the time that we're in for things to continue. But if we're going to look for a specific niche to look at, I would focus on Reg A's and the SPAC market. Anybody who follows the markets overall, it's funny. I was at a dinner meeting the other day, socially distant, of course, and somebody who knew nothing about the market was saying like, "Oh, how are those SPACs doing?" Like SPACs become a common dinner word these days, and I think that's really the key word that everybody wants to talk about. The special purpose acquisition companies that are just flying off the shelves now. It's something that we've spent many years trying to get into, and thank God we've been active in that space, both on the transfer side and on the due diligence, the background check side. But investors just want a piece of that, and as well as the Reg A's. The Reg A's, I think, came out a couple of years ago with a bang, and a couple of them came out, and then it sort of plateaued. But again, over the last 6 to 12 months, it's just become a hot topic, and companies are looking to come out, raise capital. Some of them want to go public, some of them want to remain private, but the route that they're looking to raise the capital with is through Reg A.
I wanted to ask another question.
All right, go ahead.
With regard to SPAC or a traditional IPO or Reg A, what are the differences from your perspective from VStock? Are there differences?
It's interesting. At the end of the day, VStock as a service provider is really doing the same thing for each of these types of issuers. In other words, I wear 2 hats every day. Well, I wear like 20 hats, but under the VStock umbrella, my job, as you can imagine, is really to service the company. They want to issue shares. They want to have a corporate action, dividends, stock splits, proxy, annual meeting, all those type of corporate instructions I take from the company, and that's who I want to keep happy. But at the same time, I've got 200,000 shareholders, and they are also, each and every one of them are also my clients, and they're calling up the office saying, I lost my stock cert, or I want to deposit it, or I want to gift it. And so we have 2 different types of roles that we play to keep people happy, but those are really identical if you're talking about a Reg A or a SPAC. I find that for Reg A, the investors are a little bit, and this is not in a bad way, a little bit less educated. Because for Reg A, you're raising a little bit of money from a lot more people. So we may have an issuer with 15,000 or 20,000 shareholders that we handle, and those investors may be first-time investors, so they have a lot more questions than perhaps the SPAC type of deals where they might be a little bit more sophisticated type of investors. And also the SPAC investors are a lot more sort of long-time visionaries. They know that when they're investing in a deal that it's going to be an 18-month play typically until they find the acquisition target. So in those ways, some of those deals vary a bit differently. But the role as the transfer agent is pretty much the same.
Okay. What do you think is making the SPAC so hot? Because like you, I mean, I know you're in the trenches with it, but we're hearing it. We've been hearing it a couple of years now, getting just hotter and hotter and hotter. But what do you think is driving this that's making them so new and sexy for people to drop their funds into?
Part of it is just getting caught up in the buzz, right? Some people are saying it's just part of the .com craze. This is completely just from my gut, which is totally, an unanalytical type of answer. when you're investing in a SPAC, you're investing in the unknown, right? When you're investing day one, you have no idea what type of company you're putting your money into, or potentially. You're investing in a company that's, for lack of a better dirty word, is a shell, that is intending to acquire a company over the next couple of months. But what you're investing in today is that unknown. You're investing in the potential. You're investing in what if, what could happen, what might they buy. And so for a lot of people, that's really exciting. And so number one, they're investing in potential. And number two, if you look at the SPACs that are coming out today, what makes a SPAC is the management team and the sponsors. And the sponsors and the management team, you're looking at their bios and you're looking at their backgrounds, and they're off the charts, especially, over the last couple months. They are the creme de la creme and some really big names and big players. And so when you're investing really in the jockey. You're saying, listen, these guys have tremendous track records, and if they've done it before, they could probably do it again. And I think that's what's driving the interest level.
You said something, that jockey thing. I have a buddy of mine, and he's always saying, bet the jockey, bet the jockey. I want to talk about that a little bit in your own personal experience of bringing multiple companies to an acquisition stage in just a moment. But if you're watching or listening to this episode of the Deal Flow Show, you can get access to our archives as well as to future episodes. Follow us and subscribe at thedealflowshow.com. So, we talked about this the other day, bet the jockey. Yep. And you sat there and told us your background. We started this company in the basement. We were acquired. We started another one because we got caught that serial entrepreneur bug, and we're acquired, on and on. That is obviously a proven track record. What do you think for yourself are the characteristics that you've brought to the table? And how have you been successful in multiple startup all the way to acquisitions? What do you think are some of those factors that have really calculated into that?
Well, for me, I know it's just making sure I surround myself with great partners. I let them do all the work, and I just go along for the ride. So that's the easy answer. There's really no secret sauce. And the proof that there's no secret sauce is because, my role has changed drastically depending on the company. When we first started Vintage Filings, my partner, Shai Stern, is and always will be the most incredible sales, business development professional I've ever met. And anybody who's met him knows what I'm talking about, where the personalities, you wake up at 4 a.m. and you can't wait to hit the phones. And I was the complete opposite. I was the operational guy, the compliance guy, the legal guy, sort of the workhorse. And then for example, in VStock, I have a phenomenal partner, Yoel Goldfeder, who is that, legal compliance operational superstar. And I'm tasked with bringing in the business and trying to develop the brand and things like that. I still don't wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I certainly, I'm okay with, not hitting the phones. But I think, every business is different depending on sort of what you're trying to accomplish. And the only thing that I try to, wake up every day and go to sleep every night is that, I just try to build it as best as I can for that day. And that might not be the right way to go about doing it. I know that a lot of companies launch and they've got budgets and projections and targets and goals. And, for me, it's just a daily goal. Wake up and try to get as many companies as you can, get as much revenue as you can, build as many relationships as you can, try to make as many customers happy as you can. And if you do that on an hourly basis and a daily basis, ultimately, over the course of 5 or 10 years, you'll hopefully have a successful business. At least that's what I try to execute on.
That's good stuff. And I appreciate your humility in talking about people and how important of a role they play. What have you done? Because as you said, you've played different roles. And we all know that, there's not a one-size-fits-all formula for business success. So as you've looked individually at each of these businesses, as well as probably at different stages of these businesses, what's your process for analyzing Who do I need, and how do you find those people and get them to, sort of hitch their train to your wagon,
That's probably one of the toughest questions, is to try to, surround yourself with great talent. I think that each business has its own type of individual that will attract the right audience. And I think that in today's environment, with LinkedIn and with social media and with the opportunity to expand your Rolodex more broadly than ever before, it gives you a chance to really attract the right type of talent. I'm just trying to meet new people every day, and when I speak to the sales team, I just want to stress over and over and over again, the most important asset that any business can have is the Rolodex, and just keep that in mind. I mean, one time I was chasing an attorney for an IPO, literally for probably like 3 years, until finally he called me and he said, "Oh, we've got an IPO, we're going to send it to you." And I couldn't hold myself back. I was like, "John, I got to ask, I've been chasing you for 3 years. Like, you're calling me today. What changed?" So he said 2 things. He said, number one, I've been watching you on LinkedIn, and I see the progress and, the types of companies that have been using you, and, you've somewhat become an authority in that category. I was like, okay, thank you. He says, but more importantly, I called your office the other day, and the woman who answered the phone was so pleasant and so helpful and so just, energetic. It sounded to me like it must be a great working environment, and that sealed the deal for me. So you see that, like, even the people that are answering the phone and the way you answer your phone could be, what helps you close, a NASDAQ listing. You never know where it's going to come from, but it's all about relationships.
I have a concept I call the carousel concept, and you're living proof of it. You just described it. I believe that the entire market, your market of customers, your network, are on a carousel going around and around and around. You walk up to the edge of the carousel and you say, "You want to buy my stuff?" And they're going, "No, the guy you chased for 3 years," right? The timing's not right, but at some point in their life, something changes. Their belief in you changes, their situation changes, the spouse dies, a partner abandons ship, it doesn't have to be catastrophic, but something changes in their life, and suddenly everything aligns, and you have to still be standing there next to the carousel every time they go around, because you never know when they're going to be ready to get off and give you their money. And
That's great. I've never heard that before. I like that.
It's a powerful idea, because once you understand that, then all this stuff that you've done, I watched it, I commented about it, all this stuff you're doing on LinkedIn, the content, taking time out of your day to appear on a show like the Deal Flow Show, it starts to make sense, because then you realize, okay, I've got to stay out there in front of people, serving, doing my job, etc. And I could be wrong, but some of the things you said whenever I mentioned Seth and we talked about getting him booked on the show, right, was, if you're actually genuinely a good person, someone who they can depend on, they can trust your word, it matters. And
don't listen to any of that. That's for sure.
And your humility.
Yeah.
So next.
Seth, are there certain type of deals that you look for personally, or VStock looks for?
From our standpoint, it's because we're not really investors in the deal, and we don't have skin in the game or anything like that. From our standpoint, it doesn't really matter to us too much the type of deal or the industry or anything like that. But overall, I am so grateful that for what we do, whether or not we're the transfer agent, or even on the VCheck Global side, where we're doing background checks and due diligence on the board members, and if some of these bankers are putting in 100 million or 200 million, and they use us to vet the company and the board members before they give the green light, we care about the fact that it's a reputable company and that there's good management and all that. But when it comes to determining, like, is it a good company? Will they do well? Will they not? I am the last guy to be able to figure out, is this a hero or a zero? Otherwise, I'd be an investment banker. I mean, I tell the story when we were first launching Vintage Filings. One of our first IPOs, My partner Shai will remember this. Some Israeli guy came to us in our offices, and I forget if he wanted us to just do the EDGAR work or maybe even put money in. He's like, I got this great idea for a company. We're going to take, flavored syrup and we're going to put it into seltzer and have this little machine. And I'm thinking to myself, that's the craziest idea I've ever heard. I drink either Diet Pepsi or Starbucks or coffee. I'm not going to take time and with formulas and syrups and seltzer. Good luck, guy. Anyway, it was SodaStream. It's worth what? $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion. So since then, I'm like, I have no idea if something's going to flop, if it's going to be worth $1 billion. I just stay in my lane, right? I'm a service provider. I don't try to guess if it's going to be an amazing company or not.
That's a lost or a missed opportunity. But in building these different businesses that you've built, talk a little bit about when you hit the wall, because not every deal works out. Not every assumption that we make as entrepreneurs is the right answer to the situation. How do you regroup? What's your process for putting it back together and going on to the next opportunity?
So I'll probably make myself sound like old and wise, but at the beginning, it hurt, and it was, if we lost a deal, especially to a competitor where you sort of made it personal, and it's like, oh, I can't believe they won, but over time you realize that it's usually not a personal thing, and you realize that there are different relationships in play, and sometimes you get to see the big reveal, and you realize that if you lost a customer, it's because the CEO had a 15-year relationship with another vendor, and you respect that. You're like, okay, I get that. And, you also, and this is just, what I tell myself is that I'm a big believer that there's a plan and that everything happens for a reason. And, there have been many times when we've lost a deal and then it ends up, blowing up in some form or another. And it's like, wow, thank God we didn't get that deal. That would have been terrible if we had one. And of course, you can't always say that, and you don't always know, but you just have to really be able to convince yourself that if it doesn't happen, there was a reason, and it was meant to be, and it was beneficial that it didn't. But at the same time, just really try to take a lesson from it. Why did we lose it? Can we learn from it? Is there a way we can improve so that next time we don't lose it for that same reason? Just to always try to make it a learning experience.
At what point does VStock get involved in the deal-making process itself?
That's a good question. So it depends on the type of company. So on the small end, it could be a small private company that is going out to raise money for the first time, and they decide, you know what, we only have 50 shareholders. We could keep this on an Excel sheet. We don't need a transfer agent. But you know what? We want to go out to institutions. We want to go out to family offices. We want to act as if and show them that we are intending on being a real company, and we want to be compliant. Let's bring it for the $100 a month. Let's bring in a transfer agent and show them that we mean business. So we get brought in at that very early stage, or it could be a private company that the CFO says, listen, for the 50, 100, 150 shareholders, I don't need the headache of trying to keep track of an Excel with options and warrants. Let's just bring in a transfer agent. But more often than not, it's usually probably 6 months before they intend to list on the exchange, and they're dealing with the investment bankers, and they're getting the whole team in place, the underwriters, the bankers, and then that's when we're brought to the party to be part of the team.
You're right there in the heartbeat of the capital markets there in New York City, obviously. And we talked a little bit about the ghost town. What are you seeing in terms of your own business related to COVID-19? Has it improved it, given you more business because more people are moving online? How has it affected you, and how have you all responded to that?
So our main office is in Long Island, but when we listen, the biggest thing I miss about New York is, and I'm going to be a kid about this for a second, I miss going to the exchange and like ringing the bell with clients and, all the excitement. And, on the one hand, it looks like it's all, just like a big marketing ploy, but you know what? It's a real celebration, and the clients love it. And, and it's a great opportunity to meet people that you work on deals with that you've never met face to face. So I do miss that. But from a business standpoint, I gotta say, I think I'm more productive, and I think our clients are more productive through the virtual solutions that are out there. I was talking to a client of ours that was in the esports business. He was on the OTC QB, and he was listing up to NASDAQ. And he was telling me that his roadshow was happening like really as COVID was hitting, and he was flying back and forth. And he was telling me his schedule. It was as brutal as you would expect it to be, going from LA to Vegas to New York, Texas, Chicago, and then as soon as he lands, gets into the car, has a conference call, like calls in between his calls, in between his meetings, as hard as you can imagine. And they pulled it off. And he says now it's literally just back to back to back to back Zooms. And of course, there's that element of, going out to lunch and coffee, but the overwhelming response is that people are accomplishing much more by meeting more people. A lot of the virtual conferences have been productive. So I think people are meeting more people, which at the end of the day, when you're in the capital markets, that has a lot of benefits to it.
Yeah, it's been a recurring theme on our guests, right, about the virtual meetings and how cost effective it is and how they can reach so many people in short amount of time.
Oh yeah, one of the guests was on the other day. They did 65 road shows, roadshow presentations for their IPO, and it was all virtual, and it was very successful. In fact, they fully subscribed. It was.
Yeah, I didn't even think about. I mean, you talk about the cost savings of paying for the events and the conferences and the travel. We are very big advocates of conferences. We sort of got our start by sponsoring conferences, and we always wanted to do something that was different. We didn't want to be the guys that were at the conferences handing out pens. So, back in the day, and you guys probably remember this, we would hire actually different types of actors to hang at our booth for the day. So for those people that remember Entourage, we would hire Jeremy Pivens to come hang out by our booth for the day. We would hire Jeff Garland from Curb Your Enthusiasm, come tell jokes by the booth for the day. At one point, Isaiah Thomas had a popcorn company called Dale and Thomas Popcorn. And you would literally have our competitors handing out, like pens and stress balls. And then we would have a line of CEOs, like 100 people long. And then throughout the day of the conference, you'd see people like chocolate dripping down their shirts and caramel, just eating vintage Filings popcorn. So we were always trying to think of ways to distinguish ourselves. But these things cost a fortune. And now we don't sponsor anything, but those were fun times.
That's great. Actually, when we had Kevin Harrington on one of our episodes, and depending on when you're watching this, you may have already seen this episode. Is talking to our guest now, but Kevin was talking about something that they're seeing great success with is influencers. It's kind of like the virtual version of that now, where you can get a paid influencer, someone who already has exposure and authority, respect within a particular niche or vertical, and get them on video to sort of pitch your wares.
I think it's a great idea. You know what? It's about maximizing exposure. I mean, we are so long past the time where, especially for public companies, where you put out a press release and you hope somebody reads it. We're past those days, and now it's a matter of how are you going to leverage, whether it's Twitter, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Facebook, depending on the type of company and depending on the type of media you have. You've got to be able to tell your story and make it engaging and reach the masses. And with the tools and the social media, that opportunity is available for every publicly traded company. And I don't think that people leverage that in the way that they could.
That's great. That's great. Seth, what kind of people would you like to reach from our audience or our guests?
Any guest of yours is somebody that I would like to meet. No, really, I really like to meet everybody because, you know, as you had mentioned earlier, you never know when that carousel is going to bring around somebody. And you know what, even if it's not that person, he may say, oh, well, I have a buddy of mine, and that happens often, right? I got an email today. You know, I don't know what this SPAC thing is, but a buddy of mine said that he was thinking about doing it. Can I tell him to call you? I'm like, yeah. So, you know, I'm interested in meeting great people. Anybody who wants to have a conversation about anything in business, I'm open.
We've talked about, actually, and we may come back to you and have you add your element or piece of that. We've talked about doing a special episode or maybe a side piece of content just about SPACs, because there is a tremendous amount of interest. Now, you mentioned a smaller number of shareholders. Where are you seeing the money come from for the SPACs? Is it mostly institutional money? Is it family offices? Who's putting the money in them?
Yeah, the SPACs, because you're talking about such large amounts. I mean, it's almost, dare I say, comical. You know, when a company puts out a release and say, well, 3 billion wasn't enough, we're going to be upping it to 4 billion. It's like, really, what could you do with 4 billion you couldn't do with 3 billion that had to increase the offering amount? So when you're talking about, you know, SPACs of hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, you're dealing with a lot of institutions. But on a lot of the Reg A and the crowdfunding, you're dealing with, you know, thousands and 10,000 shareholders, 20,000 shareholders, and they are heavily reliant on the way they market the transactions. And there are a lot of maybe that's a separate segment as well, Reg A. There's a lot of different platforms out there, a lot of different technology that allows you to track different types of, or market to different types of investors. So they are geared much more towards the smaller mom and pop, and I think the SPACs are much more towards the larger players.
Excellent. How would someone get in touch with you if they want to reach out? What's the best way for them to reach you?
Our website is VStockTransfer.com, and my email is Seth@VStockTransfer.com.
Seth Farbman, appreciate you coming on. VStock Transfer co-founder, serial entrepreneur, service provider, and I think master networker certainly fits in there. And we really appreciate you coming on. Anything else, Paulie, before we're out?
No, actually, well, I was going to ask one more question.
All right.
What could you tell us something about yourself that the business community otherwise wouldn't know? How's that?
Oh, that's a good one.
You like that?
I try to play basketball 3 times a week, but with COVID, they've shut down the gym, so that's a little bit challenging. I have 7 kids, and I'm always looking for the next great idea. So even though I'm all about public companies and, you know, big SPACs and all that, I'm always looking for that next great startup, and I'm always thinking. So anybody who has ideas, give me a call.
Or a basketball on a court, right?
Oh yeah, I'm always open for a one-on-one. That's for sure. Hey, you got to be under 6 feet.
Oh man, I'm 6'2", but I'll squat down. Actually, my expansion in this direction will slow me down, so it'll be fair. All right. But you're on. When I'm in New York and we can get on the court, we'll do a little one-on-one.
I'll actually invite you guys, because last year, VCheck Global, we hosted the first annual VCheck 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and we rented out the Barclays Center. And we had about 120 friends and clients come down. It was awesome. I'll send you the highlight video. I pulled my back, so that's my excuse. But you know, we'll see what the conditions are like in January, February, but it was awesome. So
different companies bring a team? Each
company brought like their own team, or guys that didn't have a team. They just came, you know, individually, and we put everybody together. Put it this way, the team that won had a guy that was 6'7" or 6'9", and he just started working there the week before. Come on.
What are the odds? What are the odds?
Definitely send us that invite.
All right.
That sounds great.
Seth, thank you so much. And once again, to our audience, if you're watching or listening to this episode of the Deal Flow Show, you can get access to more episodes as well as subscribe or follow us at thedealflowshow.com. Thank you, Seth Farbman from VStock Transfer.
Thanks,
On
Seth.
behalf of Paul Nicolini, myself, JP Maroney, we'll see you in another episode of the Deal Flow Show. Take care.
For more episodes, visit thedealflowshow.com and subscribe.